Okay, so today we're going to talk about solving inequalities by multiplication and division. Yesterday we did it with addition and subtraction, so this should be a fairly easy transition. Again, it's just like solving multiplication and division equations, except for now we have inequality signs. And again, we've solved multiplication and division inequalities before. We've graphed multiplication and division inequalities before. The only thing that's going to be a change from years past is that we're using those fancy brackets for fancy people. Okay, so I'm going to start with an example problem. We'll take 1/8 n less than 84. And when I see that fraction and I want to get rid of a fraction, I should automatically think the R word. Good, reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 1/8 is? Good, 8 over 1 or just 8 will work. These will cross out. I'll be left with n less than 84 times 8 will give me 672. And again, I need to write that in the correct format to make us look like we really know how to do algebra. So I'm going to use my fancy brackets. N such that n is less than 672. Close fancy brackets. Okay. Let's go ahead and do another one, just because there's a funky rule when we multiply and divide with inequalities, and I want to make sure we remember it from the last time we did these. So if I have -3/7 r less than 21, well, again, I'm going to multiply by that reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by a -7/3. And because I'm multiplying by a negative on both sides, that's where this funky rule comes in. If I multiply or divide by a negative, so what I'm writing to cancel things out, whether it's a multiplication or a division problem, the thing I'm writing to cancel things out, if that is negative, the inequality sign flips. Okay? That's really important. Star it, highlight it, commit it to memory, make sure you know what you're talking about, etc. So, over here, this all cancels, and I'm left with R. Because I multiplied by a negative, remember that my sign is going to flip, so instead of less than, it's now greater than. I'm going to go over here, I'm going to start canceling some things out just because it'll be easier that way. So I know that 21 and 3 are both divisible by 3. So that becomes a 1, that becomes a 7. 7 times -7 is -49. And we're really smart mathematicians, so we can write it in fancy form. R such that R is greater than -49, close fancy parentheses. Okay, let me give you one of these to try by yourself. Go ahead and try that by yourself. Remember to write it with the fancy brackets or fancy parentheses, whatever we're deciding to call them today. So go ahead and solve that. If I multiply by the reciprocal, that's -5. I'm multiplying by a negative, so I need to remember to flip my sign. This stuff all cancels. I'm left with R. 20 times 5 is negative, or I'm sorry, 20 times -5 is -100. So I have R such that R is greater than -100. So that's why I multiply on both sides to cancel it out. We also are going to work with dividing on both sides to cancel things out. So let's say I start with 60t greater than 8. That means I need to divide both sides by 60 to cancel out and get t by itself. Now I have t by itself. And I do want to go ahead and simplify 8 over 60 because that's an ugly fraction and we don't like complex, hard fractions. So if I divide top and bottom both by 8, I will get 1/5. So I have t such that t is greater than 1/5, and I can move along. Go ahead and try this last problem on your own. Negative 12n greater than 15. So I hope you kept in mind the fact that this was a negative 12. When I divide by that negative, I have to flip my sign. So instead of greater than, I now have n less than. 15 over 12 simplifies to negative 5/4. So I have n such that n is less than negative 5/4. Close the fancy parentheses. Okay? So the sign flipped because I divided by a negative. Okay? Pay attention to those negatives. Now that doesn't mean if there's a negative in the problem, I flip it. It's just if I multiply or divide by a negative. Okay? See you next time.